Hello, I'm Dr. Ron England, and this is a presentation on AI in education with the title Navigating the Present and the Future. I'm actually looking at where we are going and what challenges that we're going to face as educators in dealing with AI and how we're going to deal with AI. Notice that my name is not on this presentation. It is my presentation. I did develop it. However, the rule, what we've developed here is universal, and this is really meant to be the introduction to a discussion where you're going to be the ones actually answering many of the questions. I'm going to present the framework for those questions. Right, so how are we going to prepare our students for an AI integrated future? So let's take a look. First thing you have to realize, today we're in August 2025. This is a dated presentation because all these things are going to change. But AI is pervasive. It lives inside of business, and it is considered a skill for workforce readiness. And as educators, we have to acknowledge this fact. We cannot simply deny this away. It is there, and it is important. So what we're going to do is look at what are these challenges that we're facing, because if you understand the challenges, you can understand how you're going to confront the challenges. So what do we need to know as educators? Well, there's two biggies right here. One, you need to understand how your students are using AI right now. Whether you're outlawing AI in your class or you're just basically embracing AI in your class, your students are using it. And it's not just knowing that they're using it so that you can penalize. It is how they are using it that is important. Are they using it to just dash past your homework or write the papers that you need to write? Well, they may be doing that. But they're using it. Many of them are going to be using it somehow. So there might be some that really just don't want to use it. But you need to know this. You also cannot to say, well, I lived in a world that wasn't AI, and therefore I don't need to look at AI. The literacy of AI, how your students are using it, how people use it inside of whatever discipline that you're in, is part of being an educator, and it is your responsibility. Taking on that responsibility means that you now take on the responsibility of teaching your students how to effectively use AI for the scenario in which they're going to use it. Overdependence on AI is a terrible thing, but not having any knowledge of how it's used is just as equally as a terrible thing. I know it's a technology that did not even exist a few years ago, but it exists now. One of the things that you do need to make sure that your students have as an ability is the verification skills. They're going to use AI generated content, and they need to understand the strengths and the limitations of AI generated content. They need to understand bias, inaccuracies, intellectual property, the ethics of it. There are lots of challenges. And I know this introduces more to what we have to do. That's just the world we live in. And just think about the fact that the world that we live in with these challenges, the students that you're preparing for this world are going to face even more challenges as they move forward. It's very rapidly developing. And yes, I know this. So in the discipline, and I'm going to move over to here because it's a very busy slide, we are all teaching. I'm creating this presentation for one discipline. However, AI is being integrated in all the different disciplines. And each discipline has not only its own things that they need to be able to know in the AI world, but they also have different AIs that they use and different ways that they integrate them. A good example is in my field is I think it is a critical element that I do teach, that when students are doing visualization of data, that they can go to an AI, tell it the data that it has, ask it to create Python code for the visualization, move that Python code into Colab or another Python editor, execute that code, pull back the visualizations, and then be able to make changes to increase the effectiveness of those visualizations. AI is an integral part of that. And If you just followed everything that I said, every step of that along the way requires a level of technical expertise. They can't just solve the problem with AI. So every field is going to have its own unique guidelines and its own unique requirements, and you're going to need to shift the skills for those to different sets of skills. What I can tell you is that skill is going to require higher order thinking on the part of our students, higher levels of creativity, and higher levels of judgment. All of those typically being some of the things that we consider to be weaknesses. So yeah, AI may make parts of our lives easier, but at the same time, it's going to make those who are in professional service, some of the things they do, much more challenging because we have to do it all in a higher order. So what kind of responsibilities are we looking at? Well, the biggest thing to determine here is, remember, this is targeted at educators. And I mean educators at every single level along the way. This is geared towards your college level, but this does not mean that high school level or graduate degree level or even just continuing education level can simply ignore the problem, because you can't. One of the other things that is happening as all of this is going on, professional societies and industry groups are setting up guidelines and expectations. So we need to be prepared for what those guidelines and expectations are going to be. And as they are developing these, the tools are evolving. We are driving Model T AIs. It's a great analogy for you to work with. They're going to get better. They're going to get stronger. They're going to be more effective. And we have to be prepared to move right along with this. So let's look at the key considerations that you have to deal with here. One is, anything that we decide, anything that we put together has to be adaptable, because guess what? The technology is going to evolve, and you'd rather have a framework that can adapt to that rather than become obsolete and have to be replaced. Now, balance. AI has tremendous benefits, but the foundational learning, the critical thinking skills, and the mastery of subjects to be able to evaluate what you're asking that servant, which is the AI, to do, is crucial. AI also opens up a lot of opportunities for collaboration. And I'm talking about collaboration amongst institutions and partners, but I'm really talking about, in earnest, collaboration amongst disciplines. Because there were things that were disciplines were able, and I always think that the innovation occurs at the intersections of disciplines. Well, those intersections are now much more accessible. Then, the last little piece here. AI has all sorts of issues that are associated with it. One of which is equity. A big one of which is privacy. Understanding that as you release something to an AI, you are giving it to the AI. And if you've got an NDA with materials that you need to work with, and all of a sudden you feed them in an AI to get some information, you just violated the NDA. How do you attribute how an AI is assisting you? And really, what is intellectual integrity in an AI age when you can become an expert on anything as long as you got that AI behind you? So what you know without the AI is important. What you can do with the AI is also important, and there's a distinction between the two of them. So these are issues, these are questions, these are things to consider. And what I am doing is setting up an opportunity to put together a discussion and discuss this with your colleagues, come up with policies and decisions. And hopefully this was useful and effective, and it does bring upon and gives you a basis for what those discussions will be. Thank you very much. Dr. Ron Eaglin, out.